Ozzy has cemented himself as one of the top producers in the rap industry. He's produced for artists like Drake, Travis Scott, Future, Jack Harlow, and pretty much every big name in the industry. He's got some of the bounciest, hard-hitting drums that I've heard. So in today's video, we're gonna go in depth and break down what it is about Ozzy's unique sound that keeps rappers obsessed with using his beats. Most of Ozzy's biggest hits with artists like Drake and Travis Scott have more of an up-tempo, synthy kind of sound, with songs like Grease, Fair Trade, Sicko Mode. But Ozzy has so many different styles and so much variety in his production, which I think is a huge reason why rappers keep coming back to him for new, fresh sounds. And across all of these different vibes that he creates with his beats, one thing is always there: his iconic bounce. So in this video, we're gonna go over some tricks that you can use in your beats to make them a lot bouncier. And in this video, instead of breaking down his more popular up-tempo kind of style, I wanted to dive into a different part of Ozzy's production with more slow, bouncy tracks like I Know off of Travis Scott's Utopia.
Tell me if you still love her.
We'll get into making some crazy bouncy drums later, but first, let's start with the melody. As you heard, the main melody on I Know is that creepy, eerie kind of piano, and it's super catchy. This piano might be a VST, but just from that vintage texture that it kind of has, I feel like it's going to be pretty hard to recreate unless we have that exact preset. So for this beat, I opted for a real acoustic upright piano, which I have in my studio. So I headed over to my Elements of Trap kit and I dragged in this live piano starter that I recorded. And right now, it's really just a single minor chord for the whole pattern. And this could definitely be a good starting point for the beat. For trap, you don't really need all these crazy chord progressions. Just one chord can do. But I really liked the creepy, eerie kind of vibe on I Know. And one super easy to get that kind of sound is to take your minor chord and then pitch it down or up 5 semitones, just like this. Now the piano's sounding pretty decent, but I felt like it needed a few more top line melodies to make it feel a little bit more luscious and catchy. So I went back into my kit and found this live piano phrase that I recorded and threw it on there. So now we're kind of getting somewhere, but I wanted to make it sound really vintage and kind of have that same warped texture that the piano on I Know has. So I added some RC20 for some filtering, detune, and distortion. I added in a vinyl texture just like the one you can hear on I Know. After that, I added a halftime that I kind of lowered the mix down on, just so it's kind of creating this deeper pattern underneath the main pattern that just kind of fills out the melody. And then finally, to really get that chopped sample vibe, I used the technique that you can hear on Ozzy's beat on What's Love with Shindy. As you may have been able to hear, the melody is kind of chopped up in that sample. So I bounced our piano down with the vinyl texture and all those effects, and then I chopped every single half bar and then moved the audio over just a little bit to create a little gap of silence in between each chop. And in my opinion, this is probably the easiest way to get that sampled, chopped kind of texture without making any crazy chops to your melody. From here, you could leave the melody pretty much as is with just the piano, just like Ozzy did on I Know. But I wanted to take some inspiration from another track that he just did with Offset, where he has this super eerie and catchy violin melody on Big Dog.
Hop in the track called Slide. Bulletproof, I don't gotta hide. Bulletproof Glock for the disc.
I feel like that violin just adds so much flavor to the beat. And in my opinion, there's no way to recreate that violin texture with a VST violin. So instead of drawing in some MIDI with a VST, I went into my Elements of Trap kit and grabbed this live violin phrase. And I added some subtle chops to it just to make it a little bit more repetitive and catchy. And I think it added a great flavor to the melody. So right now we've got this super solid first section of the melody, and we could probably just loop this the whole time and get away with it. But I wanted to create a B section so there's just a little bit more variety in this beat. And the easiest way to create a B section, in my opinion, is to just halftime your main melody and then kind of build around that, because then you're using the same elements as the first part, so it feels like it's still part of the same loop, but the halftime gives it a way different texture and it creates a lot more space for you to add different melodies that you may have not been able to add. So I half sped the piano and got this. And from here, I wanted to fill it out with some mellotron sounds like the ones you can hear on Dope Boy. So I added this super simple mellotron violin melody, and then I layered that with these super simple mellotron flute chords. Now the melody is done, so it's time to get into the best part of OZ's beats, the bouncy and unique drums. But before that, if you like those live instrument phrases that I use to make that melody, you've got to check out my Elements of Trap kit. It comes with over 600 of those live instrument phrases with violins, flutes, cello, piano, guitar, pretty much anything that you can name. And in total, it's got over 2,000 sounds. And if that's not enough, it even includes a full course where I go over sample making tricks and how to make hard-hitting trap beats. So if you're interested in any of that at all, just click the first link in the description. And as a thank you for watching this video, just use the code OZ at checkout and it'll get you 30% off of Elements of Trap or any of the individual kits that come with Elements of Trap. Anyways, back into the video. As Drake himself even mentions in Grease, OZ's bouncy drums are the heart of his production. Although he does have a great ear for catchy melodies, I think OZ's drum bounce is the main reason why artists like Travis Scott, Drake, and recently Offset have been obsessed with using his beats. And although I love the more up-tempo stuff that he's done, recently I've been loving these slower BPM beats that he's been doing. I feel like they just have way more bounce and kind of character. It almost feels like since he's cemented himself as a top producer in this industry, he's been able to kind of branch out a little bit more and kind of get a little bit more experimental and unique with his drums. And I think my favorite example of these bouncy drums that OZ does are the drums on I Know. Take a listen and really pay attention to the drums.
101, I'm in the zone right now. Tell me, am I still? Telling you just how I feel right now. You say it's just the drugs and
Now, there's a few things that stick out to me. First, the 808 isn't really this hard, punchy kind of 808. It's more of a subby kind of 808, and it has a very stop and go, catchy, kind of groovy melodic pattern almost. Second, the percussion adds a ton of bounce to this beat. And third, which you might not have heard from that preview, but we'll get into later, OZ changes the drum sounds that he uses in different sections of the beat to kind of help it evolve and not feel so stagnant. This might seem like a subtle change, but all those 1% improvements really add up to a better finished product. So with that in mind, let's get into making our OZ style drums. Because percussion is so important to the bounce of OZ's style of beats, typically he keeps the hi-hats pretty simple. A lot of the time, OZ just uses a simple two-step hi-hat pattern because unlike producers like Southside or people from 808 Mafia, his bounce isn't really relying on crazy hi-hat rolls and stuff like that. So to start out our beat, I put down this super simple two-step hi-hat pattern with a couple 16th note rolls and a super simple crispy snare. Now that we've got the rhythm going steady, I want to make it bouncy and unique by adding a bunch of those OZ style perks. And if you listen to the drums on I Know, you can hear a laser sound effect and a cowbell.
I know how I lied to way before I had you.
So I took some inspiration from that and laid those down. But those two perks aren't going to cut it if we want to get that OZ kind of sound. So I grabbed another rim shot and a triangle, and then I added two different open hats. And the reason I didn't just use one open hat is because one technique that OZ uses all the time to create unique bounce with his percussion, he kind of swaps which sounds he's using, and it creates almost like a call and response between all of the sounds. And that changing of the sounds gives it a lot more feeling, groove, and bounce. Right now, the bounce is pretty solid, but on songs like Hop Out the Van by Offset, the kick and the 808 are such a huge part of the beat's bounce. That stop and go kind of 808 pattern creates a ton of bounce in this beat. And it's because the 808 creates these little pockets of silence. And it's these pockets that give bounce to the beat. If everything is just playing consistently, there's no room for you to kind of catch a groove to it because it's just always coming right at you. So to get that sound, I went into my sampler and grabbed a subby 808, and then I made sure that it had no release so that it stops as soon as I stop playing it on the MIDI. And then I put down this super choppy, groovy 808 pattern. And to show you how different that sounds if we play those same exact notes with no pauses, just letting them play through the whole time, I made this little before and after. Notice how much more bounce and energy is there when the 808 is pausing like that. Anyways, now that we have the 808, the last thing we need is a hard-hitting kick. And one thing I love that OZ does with his kicks is he keeps a lot of them playing directly with the 808, but he does throw some in there that are not playing directly with the 808. So everything's not always so locked together. And like I said, kind of creating these call and responses with different drum sounds is a big reason why his beats are so bouncy. So I'm gonna play all the drums now and just pay attention to how the kick and 808 are working together. Now the drums for the first section are done. But one thing OZ does on I Know to keep the drums evolving is change the 808. So he uses two different 808s in the beat.
I know I lied to way before, no. I lied to way before,
It starts with that more stop and go bouncy kind of 808, and then it changes to a more punchy kind of drawn out simple 808 pattern. So I did the same thing here. With that, the beat is finished. But before I play that, I just wanted to remind you guys that my brand new merch is dropping soon. We're gonna have 3 different designs and I'm super excited to share it with you guys. But anyways, let's listen to the beat. I love the violin. Section of loop. And the 808 switch. If you want any of those drum sounds or phrases that I used to make this beat, they're all in my Elements of Trap kit, so make sure to hit the first link in the description to grab that. Peace.